Quantum Heart Rising. My name's Christina, and this is video 4. Today, I wanted to talk about something that isn't often discussed, and that is the fact that each of us carry a vast, multi-dimensional world inside. We're sort of taught to see ourselves just as a simple being, consciousness in a finite container moving through a material world. But we're so much more. We contain literal universes within. I'm just going to begin by talking about the surface level. So the surface level is where most of us spend most of our time. This is where we have just our typical daily thoughts, ideas. What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to have for dinner? This is the space where moods and emotions roll in and out. And it's where a lot of things happen on autopilot because we're so used to it. We have routines that we're used to the way we're doing it. And so we don't actually have to think very much. So this is the area that most of us spend the majority of our time. It's a bit like a main street in a small town that we know really well. It's very familiar. We know exactly how to navigate it and where everything is. But it's even at this level, we get little glimpses, little tiny glimpses that remind us that there's something more. It could just be the flicker of light on the water. It could be the iridescent shimmering on an insect. Just a really heartfelt conversation that just gives us that little inkling, that little reminder that there's something more. Kind of stirs up a longing under the surface. Just a longing for something bigger, something with more meaning, something deeper. So this is where most of us spend most of our time. But just below that, we have the personal subconscious. So this level of being at the subconscious level is such a potent territory. It's literally the space that our personal reality grows out of, and it colors the way we see everything. But unfortunately, we're not really taught how to build well or even how to navigate at this level. And so most of us tend to use it for is just kind of shoving things that we don't really want affecting us at the conscious level. So it's a really unfortunate default that so many of us just go to because we're not shown a better way. And so what happens is that we uh, experience something that feels big, that feels uncomfortable, and in a ideal world, we would feel it, we would learn from it, and we would release it and move on. But we're not given the tools to do that often. And so what ends up happening is that we just push it down and carry on, chin up, carry on. And so what happens is that this under level becomes filled with all this stuff that we haven't processed, that we didn't want to look at. So this space ends up being the basement where so much we just sort of shove everything that we don't want to look at. And not only do we shove the feelings and emotions and memories and that we really don't want to have floating around at the surface, also the parts of us that are connected to those feelings, those sensations also often get relegated. And that those are shadow parts. Those are the parts that become shadow parts, parts of us that get associated with a particular feeling or memory and kind of get locked with that unprocessed stuff and exiled into the basement. But not only do we relegate the uncomfortable and the ugly and all that we don't want to see or know about, we also tend to put some of our most shiny and brilliant and magical and unique parts. And the reason why we do that is because we want to fit in. We just, especially as children, we're taught to take our cues from the outside. How should I be? What do I need to do to be normal? And so in that also gets relegated to that unconscious realm. And we have no training on how to navigate this realm. And there's ways through meditation, through hypnosis that we can go down and access this. And so this is the place where a lot of healing needs to take place because, like I said, this becomes the foundation of our reality. It's underneath everything. So it's affecting everything above it. In the last video, I talked about how in the magical blue period, I met that aspect of myself that was at the child aspect that was angry, 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 and she was kind of abandoned down in the unconscious. That's an example. But I also discovered these amazing, magical, joyful parts of me as well that had been relegated there. Because this level shapes everything above it, it's so important that we go down and take the time to really consciously explore what is there. What have we built? What kind of false belief structures are in place that are affecting everything on the surface level? So I think the more we step into knowing ourselves, this is a key part of knowing ourselves is to be able to access these deeper levels of self, to see what's really going on, what's driving us, why are we doing what we do? And another reason why that personal subconscious level is so important is because just below that is the collective unconscious, the universal expanse. This is beyond the story of me. This is when we can drop down into that level. We go beyond our personal human identity in this life and drop into the more soul level experience. At this level in the collective field, we find layers of reality and dimensions rich with meaning. We find ancestral memories, archetypes. Before the magical blue period, I'd only just glimpsed this level of being, just glimpsed it. At the edge of sleep, that liminal space between waking and dreaming. But when I was in the blue period, I had full access to this level. And I can remember one of the visions, I would often have visions that would be teaching me, showing me something. And in this one, it was like I had this little house, and then I discovered a door, and through the door I discovered, whoa, there's a whole other wing. And as I explored, I found all these rooms, and every room was rich with treasures and magical discoveries and realizations. And as I explored, it was more and more exciting, and I kept finding more and more wings and realizing, oh, wow, this little house that I thought was me just extends so far beyond what I possibly imagined. Now, there was one door that said, do not enter, but I won't get into that today. I'll save that for another time because that's a juicy bit that deserves I think, an episode of its own. But I want to share about how at these really deep levels, things feel really, really different. Like when I did gain access to these realms, sometimes what I experienced was so foreign, so strange. I just felt like a small child witnessing these complex realities that I barely could grasp. Even though I don't have the full access that I once had to those realms, in the work I do, I get to accompany people into those type of spaces, into those more collective, more deep spaces. And it's amazing to see because what's quite surprising is that even though each person's experience is completely unique, there does seem to be commonalities. So it's as if in this subjective landscape, there are objective landmarks or just ways of processing, of understanding that seem to come up. So just as an example, like one of them One of them is the fact that when people communicate at that level, it's often telepathic communication. So it can be interesting because in the beginning, say in a session, somebody may encounter a being and I ask if they can communicate with them, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm trying." And then it's sort of, it can take a minute or two, and then they'll realize, oh, wait, the communication is actually just coming into my mind in these kind of packages that have images and information. And it's kind of like these information packs that are sent from one being to another. So that's just one example. There's actually many, and some of them I'm really loath to even bring up at this stage because they seem strange. Down the road, I'll probably step into really explaining, what comes through in sessions in terms of commonalities because it really is fascinating. I hope I've been fairly clear because this isn't necessarily a really easy subject to talk about. I will say goodbye and thank you. I'm trying to create a sacred space here. If this is something that resonates with you, come along for the journey. Like, subscribe, and share with anybody who might just enjoy this content as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a beautiful week. Until next time.